Ladies and gentlemen, oh, there comes a moment in every relationship when silence speaks louder than words, when distance isn't rejection, it's protection. You see, sometimes the people who seem to pull away the most are actually the ones who feel the most deeply. Today, I want to talk about something powerful, something that hides beneath the surface of strength, independence, and control. When an avoidant does something unexpected, something that breaks their usual pattern, it's not random, it's not by accident, it's a sign that they're secretly grateful to have you. Now listen, this isn't about chasing, fixing, or convincing anyone. It's about understanding human behavior at its core. Because when you can see beyond the walls people build, when you can recognize love disguised as fear, you gain the power to connect on a level most people never reach. So today, as we dive deep into this truth, I want you to open your heart, not to judgment, but to understanding. Because sometimes the strongest love is the quietest. And when an avoidant finally shows gratitude, even in their subtle way, that's when you know you've touched something real. Are you ready to uncover what that really means? Let's begin. When an avoidant person begins to withdraw, most people instantly feel rejected. They assume that distance equals disinterest, that silence means absence of love. But the truth runs far deeper than what meets the eye. When someone with avoidant tendencies pulls back, what they are often expressing is not a lack of care, it's fear, vulnerability, and emotional overload. And hidden behind that wall of retreat is something powerful, something most people overlook: gratitude. They may not say it, they may not show it in the way you expect, but deep down, they are quietly thankful for your presence, for your patience, for being the one person who doesn't demand from them what they don't yet know how to give. You see, avoidants are wired to protect themselves from emotional pain. Their past may have taught them that love equals loss, that closeness brings chaos, that trust can turn into betrayal. So when they start to feel deeply connected to you, it stirs something inside them, an alarm that says, this is dangerous. Their instinct is to retreat to safety, to rebuild the distance they know how to manage. But here's the hidden beauty. If they pull away and still think about you, if they come back even slightly, if they make small efforts in their own guarded way, that is their form of gratitude. It's them saying, thank you for being safe. Thank you for seeing me without judgment. Gratitude in this context doesn't come as grand gestures or flowery words. It shows up in quiet ways. A message out of the blue, a look that lingers, a conversation they wouldn't normally initiate. It's the way they remember small things about you, or how they make sure you're okay without making it obvious. Those subtle actions are their language of appreciation. They might never say, I'm grateful for you, because the words feel too exposing. But when they act with small kindnesses after their withdrawal, it's their heart whispering gratitude behind the armor of their fear. This is where most people miss the signal. They interpret space as abandonment instead of understanding that it's actually a moment of emotional recalibration. When an avoidant steps back, they're not plotting to leave. They're trying to regulate what they're feeling. Your steadiness during that phase, your ability to stay grounded without chasing, accusing, or panicking becomes a source of safety. And when you provide that safety, they begin to associate you not with threat, but with peace. That's when gratitude grows quietly and powerfully. The truth is, love for an avoidant isn't about dramatic expression. It's about emotional safety. They feel grateful for the person who doesn't try to change them, who doesn't force conversations they're not ready for, who doesn't take their silence personally. They're thankful for the one who holds space without pressure. That gratitude transforms how they view connection. It's no longer something to fear. It becomes something to appreciate, something they can begin to trust. And once trust enters the equation, something incredible happens. Their gratitude turns into courage. They begin to take small steps toward vulnerability, toward expression, toward closeness. The same person who once ran from love starts to lean into it, not because you pushed them, but because your patience created a safe place for their heart to unfold. That's the unseen reward of understanding the avoidant heart, realizing that gratitude doesn't always sound like thank you. Sometimes it looks like them staying a little longer. Sometimes it feels like them letting you in inch by inch. So when an avoidant withdraws, don't assume you've lost them. See it for what it really is. A moment where they're learning how to handle the depth of their feelings. Recognize that their pullback is not rejection, but reflection. And when they return, no matter how subtly, that's their heart's quiet way of saying, I'm grateful for you, for your patience, your strength, and your understanding. Because for someone who has spent a lifetime running from love, feeling safe enough to return is the greatest form of gratitude they can ever show. Actions always speak louder than words. And when it comes to avoidant personalities, this truth becomes the very foundation of how they express love, gratitude, and emotional connection. You see, an avoidant may never tell you directly how much they care. They might never sit down and pour out their feelings in the poetic ways you've seen in movies. But if you learn to read between the lines, if you pay attention to what they adore rather than what they say, you'll discover a whole new world of meaning hidden in their actions. Their love language isn't built on declarations. It's built on consistency, small gestures, and quiet moments that most people overlook. When an avoidant starts to value you, they don't broadcast it. They demonstrate it in subtle, practical ways. It might look like them fixing something for you without you asking, remembering a detail you once mentioned, or showing up when you least expect it but most need it. These may seem like ordinary acts, but for someone who struggles with vulnerability, every action like that is an enormous step forward. It's their way of saying, you matter to me, without the fear that comes with saying it out loud. You have to understand words can feel dangerous to someone who has learned to survive through emotional control. Words make them feel exposed, vulnerable, even powerless. Actions, however, give them a sense of stability. They can do something without losing their balance. So they pour their emotions into actions. They'll make sure you're safe. They'll lend a helping hand. They'll quietly support you from the background. They might act indifferent on the surface, but their behavior will tell a completely different story. The challenge for most people is learning to see those quiet expressions for what they truly are: unspoken gratitude and love. The irony is that while an avoidant often fears emotional closeness, they show loyalty in ways that run deep. They may not say, I love you every day, but they'll be the one who remembers your routine, who checks on you in small, almost invisible ways, who notices when something's wrong even if you don't say it. And when you confront them with words of appreciation or affection, they might seem uncomfortable, not because they don't appreciate it, but because they're not used to being emotionally recognized. Their actions are their comfort zone. It's how they communicate in a world that feels too loud and unpredictable. If you want to truly connect with an avoidant, you must learn to value their actions as emotional currency. The moment you stop demanding verbal proof and start acknowledging the small things they do, you'll notice their behavior shifting. They'll begin to relax. They'll start doing more, giving more, opening up more, because they feel seen, not pressured. Every avoidant craves acceptance, even though they pretend not to. When you show them that their actions speak loudly enough for you, you're telling them, I see your effort, I understand your language. And that's when gratitude deepens between you both. The power of actions over words also reveals a deeper truth about love itself. It's not about what people say, it's about what they consistently do. It's about the way they show up, the way they stay even when it's hard, the way they try again and again. For avoidance, trying is loving, showing up is gratitude. Their every effort to connect, no matter how awkward or small, is a victory over fear. It's proof that they're choosing connection over avoidance, even if they can't articulate it yet. So when an avoidant person starts doing little things for you, when they begin to make space for you in their daily life, understand that those moments are monumental. They may never say the words you want to hear, but their actions carry more truth than 1,000 speeches ever could. Love from an avoidant doesn't come wrapped in pretty words. It's built quietly through effort, reliability, and presence. And when you can recognize those actions for what they are, you not only see their gratitude, you earn their trust, something far rarer and far more powerful than words could ever express. Fear of vulnerability is one of the deepest emotional battles an avoidant person faces, and it often shapes every choice they make in relationships. To truly understand an avoidant's behavior, you have to look beyond what they show you and see what they're protecting. Vulnerability feels dangerous to them because it reminds them of moments in life when opening up led to disappointment, judgment, or pain. Somewhere in their past, they learned that being emotionally exposed equals being unsafe. So they built walls, strong ones. They convinced themselves that independence equals strength, that distance equals control, and that emotions only lead to chaos.
Yet,
beneath all that self-protection lies a heart that wants connection just as much as anyone else's. It's not that they don't feel, it's that they feel too much, and that intensity scares them. When someone with avoidant tendencies starts to fall for you, it triggers an inner conflict. On one hand, they crave the closeness, the safety, the warmth that connection brings. On the other, that same closeness awakens old fears of being hurt or rejected. It's like standing on the edge of a cliff. They can see the beauty below, but the fear of falling keeps them frozen. So instead of stepping forward, they take a step back. They retreat into silence. They act indifferent. They pretend they don't care. But this isn't about you. It's about their battle between love and fear. They're trying to protect themselves from the very thing they want most. Avoidants often wear a mask of strength. They'll tell you they're fine on their own, that they don't need anyone, that they prefer independence. But behind that mask is a quiet truth. They long to be seen and understood just like everyone else. They fear that if they show their true self, their insecurities, their weaknesses, their emotions, they'll be rejected or judged. Vulnerability to them feels like losing power, so they choose control over connection. They'll retreat into solitude rather than risk being misunderstood. And yet, that fear is also what holds them back from experiencing the full beauty of love and gratitude. The moment they begin to trust you enough to lower their guard, even slightly, that's when transformation begins. That's when gratitude starts to blossom. Because vulnerability for them isn't just about being open, it's about feeling safe enough to be open. When you create an environment where they don't feel pressured, where their emotions aren't used against them, they start to test the waters. Maybe they'll share a small personal story. Maybe they'll admit something that shows a crack in their armor. And when you respond with understanding instead of judgment, that's when they silently say, thank you. Thank you for not running. Thank you for seeing me and staying anyway. It takes immense courage for an avoidant to be vulnerable. Every time they let you in, it's like breaking a lifelong rule they made to protect themselves. Their fear doesn't disappear overnight. It softens slowly. Each time they're met with patience instead of pressure, their trust deepens. And with that trust comes appreciation. They become grateful for the person who doesn't demand perfection, who doesn't take their withdrawal personally, who understands that beneath the silence is a heart learning how to feel again. The fear of vulnerability isn't about weakness. It's about survival. Avoidants have spent years believing that emotions make them fragile, but love, real love, teaches them that vulnerability isn't a threat. It's a bridge. It's the only path to true connection. So when they finally start opening up to you, understand what that means. It means you've earned a place few people ever do. It means you've shown them that love doesn't have to hurt. And in that space of newfound safety, their fear begins to transform into gratitude. Gratitude for your patience, gratitude for your presence, gratitude for giving them the courage to trust again. Because the moment an avoidant allows themselves to be vulnerable with you, that's not just emotional progress. That's love in its purest, most courageous form. When an avoidant asks for space, it often feels like rejection to the person who loves them. It feels like they're walking away, shutting you out, or pulling the connection apart piece by piece. But in reality, that space is not always a wall. It can be a bridge. What most people fail to understand is that for avoidance, space is not about escaping love. It's about trying to breathe within it. It's their way of finding balance between the overwhelming pull of emotion and their need for emotional safety. And when space is given rather than resisted, something incredible begins to happen. The connection starts to deepen. Because space, when understood and respected, becomes the soil where trust and gratitude quietly grow. Avoidants live in a constant tug of war between desire and fear. They crave closeness but are terrified of losing themselves within it. To them, emotional intensity can feel like suffocation, even when it's rooted in love. So when they ask for distance, they're not saying, I don't care. They're really saying, I need time to process what I'm feeling. That time apart gives them room to calm the internal chaos, to organize their emotions, and to reflect on the relationship without feeling cornered. And if you can allow that, if you can resist the urge to chase, to question, to force connection in that moment, you send a powerful message that you are safe here, even when you need to pull back. That message is what helps an avoidant relax into love instead of running from it. What happens next is where the shift begins. Once the avoidant feels that their need for space is respected, their defenses start to lower. They realize that love doesn't have to mean losing control. They begin to see you not as someone who threatens their peace, but as someone who protects it. And that realization breeds something they rarely express openly: gratitude. Gratitude that you didn't make them feel guilty for being who they are. Gratitude that you understood their silence without resentment. Gratitude that you stayed steady even when they couldn't. When space is allowed to exist without conflict, connection doesn't weaken, it strengthens. Because real love isn't about constant closeness, it's about emotional rhythm. It's about the ebb and flow that allows both people to remain whole while being together. Avoidance needs space the way lungs need air. And once they have that air, they return, not out of obligation, but out of genuine desire. When they come back more present, more open, and more grateful. They may not say it, but you'll see it in their behavior, in the softness of their tone, in the small ways they start to show up again. It's easy to mistake distance for disinterest, but if you truly want to understand an avoidant, you have to look deeper. Space is their language of self-regulation. It's how they maintain emotional stability so they can continue to connect. And your ability to honor that space becomes one of the most powerful acts of love you can give. It tells them, I trust you enough to let you breathe. And that trust builds emotional safety faster than any words ever could. Over time, something beautiful happens. The avoidant begins to associate love not with pressure, but with peace. The fear that once made them withdraw slowly fades, replaced by appreciation for the person who never tried to cage them. The connection evolves from something fragile and uncertain to something steady and resilient. Love becomes less about closeness at all times and more about connection that survives the distance. So when they ask for space, don't see it as a step away. See it as part of their path toward closeness. Because when space is respected, it transforms. It becomes the quiet, unseen force that pulls them closer again and again. And when they return, in their own time and in their own way, what they bring back is not just love. It's trust, respect, and a deep, silent gratitude for the person who understood that sometimes space isn't separation. It's connection in its purest, most sacred form. There comes a moment in every relationship with an avoidant when something shifts. A quiet but powerful turning point. It's that subtle moment when their actions start to change, when their eyes soften, when their tone becomes less defensive. It's when they begin to see you not as a potential threat, but as a steady, safe presence. This is the turning point of awareness, the moment they start to realize your value. Not just because of how you make them feel, but because of how you make them feel safe. It doesn't happen suddenly or dramatically. It happens in whispers through experiences that touch their heart without demanding anything in return. And when this awareness sets in, Gratitude begins to awaken in ways they never expected. Avoidants often live behind invisible walls. They've built them so high that even love struggles to climb over. But over time, your consistency, patience, and calm energy start to wear those walls down, not through force, but through understanding. They begin to notice that you don't react to their distance with anger. You don't guilt trip them when they pull away. You don't make love conditional. Instead, you stand firm, offering a sense of calm that quietly says, you're safe here, even when you're scared. That's the moment the avoidant starts to see you differently. They begin to understand that love doesn't have to be chaos. It can be steady. It can be safe. The turning point comes when they realize you're not trying to fix them or chase them. For someone who spent a lifetime fearing emotional entrapment, that realization is liberating. They start to understand that your presence isn't a demand, it's a choice. They see that you respect their need for space without taking it personally, that you listen more than you lecture, that you love them without trying to own them. This recognition strikes something deep within them because it challenges everything they thought they knew about love. And when they see that your love isn't built on control but on acceptance, something inside them melts. Gratitude takes root. This awareness also brings clarity to their fears. They start to notice that their patterns of avoidance have protected them from pain, yes, but also from joy, connection, and genuine intimacy. They realize that the safety they've been chasing through isolation pales in comparison to the safety they feel when they're with someone who understands them without judgment. That realization is profound. It's as if they've been living behind glass, watching life happen, and for the first time, someone has reached through and touched them without breaking that fragile barrier. That's when gratitude becomes emotional fuel. It motivates them to change, to try to trust again. You'll notice it in small ways first. They might start to communicate a bit more. They might stay longer during conversations, open up about something personal, or show affection more freely. Each of these moments is a milestone in their emotional evolution. They're beginning to see that vulnerability doesn't equal weakness. It equals freedom. They're learning that connection doesn't have to mean losing themselves. And most importantly, they're realizing that love, when it's genuine, is not a trap. It's a sanctuary. That turning point of awareness doesn't just transform them. It transforms the relationship. Because now they're not just reacting from fear. They're responding from appreciation. They're grateful for your patience, for the space you gave, for the love you offered without strings attached. They may never articulate it in words, but their behavior starts to reflect it. They begin to invest emotionally. They start to consider your feelings as much as their own. They become more intentional, more present, more real. In that awareness lies the beginning of emotional intimacy. It's not loud or dramatic. It's quiet, steady, and powerful. It's the moment an avoidant finally understands that love isn't supposed to hurt, that it's not about giving up control. It's about finding peace and connection. And from that moment on, every step they take toward you is guided by gratitude. Gratitude for your understanding, your consistency, and the safety you gave them to rediscover what love truly means. Because in the end, awareness is the light that breaks through fear, and gratitude is the warmth that helps them stay. Love beyond comfort zones is the point where true growth begins for both the avoidant and the one who loves them. For most of their lives, avoidant individuals have lived inside emotional boundaries designed to protect them from pain. They've built comfort zones out of self-reliance, independence, and emotional control. It's where they feel safe, where nothing unpredictable can hurt them. But love doesn't thrive in comfort. Love thrives in courage. And when an avoidant starts to step outside that zone, even in the smallest ways, it's a monumental act of bravery. It's them saying, I'm willing to feel something new, even if it scares me. And that step, however small, is proof that your presence has changed something deep within them. For someone who's always protected themselves through distance, letting love in feels like walking into unknown territory. It's uncomfortable, uncertain, and completely against the rules they've lived by. But slowly, as they experience your patience, as they see that you don't punish them for their flaws, and as they realize that love doesn't have to equal loss, they begin to test their boundaries. They might start opening up about their thoughts, sharing small vulnerabilities, or allowing you closer in moments they would normally shut down. These moments are easy to overlook, but for them, they're acts of transformation. They are learning to replace control with trust. Love beyond comfort zones is not just about the avoidant changing, it's about both people growing. You too are challenged to stretch your limits. Loving someone who fears intimacy demands strength, patience, and emotional intelligence. It teaches you that love is not always about getting what you want when you want it. It's about seeing the other person's pain and choosing empathy instead of frustration. It's about learning to love without expectation, to give without trying to fix, to hold space without needing immediate reassurance. That kind of love transforms you into someone calmer, wiser, and stronger. So, while the avoidant is learning to lean into love, you're learning to expand your capacity to understand. Both of you are stepping beyond comfort together. As this dynamic evolves, the avoidant begins to experience something they never thought possible: safety and closeness. Their fear starts to shrink because they realize that being emotionally open doesn't have to mean losing control. It means being seen, being accepted, being valued. That realization changes everything. It's like breathing fresh air after living behind glass for years. They begin to appreciate you in ways they never could before. Their gratitude becomes quiet but deep. Thankfulness for the person who stayed when it was hard, for the one who saw their walls and didn't walk away. Every time they stretch beyond their comfort zone, they are rewriting their emotional story. They're learning that love doesn't have to destroy, it can heal. And that healing creates a ripple effect. It inspires them to communicate better, to show affection more freely, to trust the bond that's forming. They begin to experience what true connection feels like, not as something that takes from them, but something that gives back. And that feeling becomes addictive in the best way. It pulls them further out of isolation and into shared growth. Love that grows beyond comfort zones becomes the kind of bond that few people ever experience. It's built on patience, mutual respect, and deep emotional awareness. It doesn't demand perfection. It celebrates progress. It understands that love is not always soft and easy. It's a process of unlearning old fears and learning new ways to connect. For the avoidant, it means learning to stay even when their instinct is to run. For you, it means learning to hold space when the silence feels heavy. Together, it becomes a dance of courage, one step at a time, each step a little further beyond fear. And in that space beyond comfort, something beautiful happens. Gratitude blossoms into love that's real, strong, and enduring. The avoidant begins to see you not as a challenge, but as home. They're grateful for your patience, for your steadiness, for your ability to love them even when they couldn't love themselves fully. And you, in turn, are grateful for the transformation you've both undergone, because love beyond comfort zones isn't about changing someone. It's about growing together into something extraordinary. It's about finding peace in the unfamiliar and realizing that the greatest love stories are written not in comfort, but in courage.